Hi, it's Isabel, A Curious Tale. Today I have an exciting video because I'm going to be unboxing this oracle deck, a Gothic Witch's Oracle by Raven Digitalis. I believe it has been available to purchase in the UK since spring, or the beginning of spring, and I'd ordered it and it just arrived. So I wanted to first unbox the deck and give you my first impression, and then I thought I'll just delve a little deeper into it, because as soon as I saw that this deck was going to be published, I was already thinking about how I'd previously mentioned about the idea of world building with tarot and oracle decks, because as you can see, this, as the title suggests, is designed to be an oracle deck that takes Gothic aesthetics and sort of uses them as a vehicle for exploring the subconscious, for exploring oneself and one's own spiritual path. Just for some background, the book I've read before by the author and creator Raven Digitalis is this Goth craft, which I really enjoyed. It's a book about the craft, magic, but very much from the perspective of the Gothic subculture and creativity, aesthetics, music. And one thing I really liked about the book, which it seems like the oracle deck is also going to do, is really just explore how you can use things that might be seen as just purely aesthetic or cultural, subcultural, as really meaningful elements of one's own spiritual practice, which is obviously in a very different aesthetic language, what I sort of try to do with my tarot deck, the Purnima Tarot, as well. Just saying, why do we differentiate between the material and the spiritual? Perhaps things that some people would see as frivolous could actually be really meaningful to others, and yeah, so that's the feel that I get. So let's see if that's what I think when I actually open it. I tried not to look too much at any of the cards or read any reviews, just because at the start I wanted to just really have my own first impression, and then but afterwards I plan to see what other people have said about this deck as well. So she's on box. It's a glossy box. You can see by the shine it's very overcast day, so I apologise for the lighting, but it's quite fitting. And obviously yeah, you might be thinking, is this a deck for goths? Am I a goth? I mean, I think that's a bit of an oversimplification. I think as soon as I saw this deck, I felt very nostalgic, and I think there'll be a lot of people who, like me, don't necessarily look Gothic all the time, but for whom the subculture has always been a very important part of our lives, and always will be, especially music and art. And I think yeah, it's not something, I think we've moved beyond the idea of having to fit into a box to enjoy certain types of media and connect with it. Oh, just as a funny side note, I want to insert a picture of me when I was 11 here, just to give a little context. This is over 2 decades ago, so yes, I definitely don't look Gothic all the time, but my soul is always always melancholically whimsical, I would say, and this is the feel I got from the deck. So, opening the book, sorry, again, in my excitement I popped the guidebook to the side, but this is the guidebook, and it's pretty well sized, it's got a proper spine, it's a proper book, and just to mention as well, the art in this deck is by John Santerineross. I'm sorry, I don't think I can pronounce that correctly, but I'll look into that. I'm pretty sure I've seen this artist's creations before, but hadn't been able to put the name to the art, so now I can, which is great. So flicking through the book, we've got full colour representations of the cards in the book, and then we have key themes, esoteric summary, and then activating the insight. So each card has, one page with a full colour illustration and some key themes. For example, one card I can see has 3 key themes. I think they all do. And then we've got, quite a few good paragraphs of text, so that's looking very promising. And then opening the book, the deck comes not shrink wrapped, which is nice. It's always nice to see when creators don't use too much plastic. So it's just got the paper band around it to keep it together. And then I'll show you the inside of the box. It's got a ribbon to take the cards out, which is very handy, and a magnetic closure. It's quite a sturdy box. And then the inside of the box is lovely. We've got this moon phase design, and then we've got what appears to be a sort of collage of some of the card images. So I'll put that aside and just have a really quick flick through, give my first general impression, and then we'll look through the deck together in a little bit more detail from a bit closer in. Okay, so we're starting with number 40. It seems like this deck is going to go down in number. I'm not sure if that's intentional or just how it's been packaged. Okay, so card number 1, Embracing Musical Healing. I just want to show this because this is an image I'd seen before ordering the deck, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, not only because this to me is a very nostalgic aesthetic, very much early to mid 2000s Gothic aesthetics that were, over MySpace and Vampire Freaks and those online websites that were so big in the subculture. It's also immediately bringing to mind, album covers of certain musicians in the Gothic and industrial, genres, and yeah, just very creative. And again, like the fact that it says Embracing Musical Healing, to me it just shows how this deck is about taking the elements of life that you really love and then seeing how those elements can actually become meaningful components of your own spiritual journey as well. So it does seem like that that is how the deck's sort of reading. Got bonding with the elements, modifying the body. So it seems like there's a mix of cards that are more sort of classically spiritually titled, and then other cards that you probably wouldn't find in other oracle decks. For example here, Navigating Personal Boundaries, that's a card that I could imagine being in a lot of different oracle decks. And then, Nurturing the Inner Child. But then we've got Loving Your Uniqueness, Reflecting on Vices, so there's that sort of shadow focus of the deck. And then Enchanting Jewellery and Accessories, again, that's slightly more tailored to sort of aesthetics and personal style, and sort of incorporating that into spiritual practice. So I'm excited to look through the deck. Here's the card backs. We've got Moth and Moons. Again, that's quite nostalgic, even maybe the later 2010s. I feel like this sort of imagery was very prevalent, and that's not to say that this deck isn't current by any means. I just love how I think when I feel like so many creators are really trying to just tap into the current trends, it's nice to see a deck that seems to have a very authentic voice that isn't trying to be like the most the most on trends, the most sort of modern. It's just its own voice, and I think especially as a person who was enjoying the Gothic subculture and just sort of online art in general throughout the past 20 years or so. It's nice to see images that I remember having the same feeling when I saw online several decades ago. So that's really cool. So yes, let's have a little look at the cards and then see if we want to tap into some of the media that I have compiled that I want to see if it fits with the deck. Oh, just as a side note, I'm drinking Countess Grey tea today, and I just wanted to share about my outfit because I thought that would be fun. First, this headdress I made using some crystals I found in the jungle outside Kathmandu in Nepal, and then this necklace is a vintage piece from the Swat Valley in Pakistan. As a big vintage jewellery collector, especially focusing on Southeast Asia and Central Asia, a piece like this was really on my wish list for a very long time because the Swat Valley has some absolutely beautiful jewellery and clothing. So I was very excited to find this. And then my sort of coat, overcoat thing is vintage Défi à l'Avenir, a brand I like to collect from France in the early 2000s. So I just wanted to share that. Again, it's not an outfit that, like, the deck is specifically Gothic or not Gothic, but it reflects a lot of things that I love, like vintage and this sort of idea of melancholic whimsy, and also jewellery from around the world. I also have, some different rings from different places and other things. So yeah, I just thought it would be fun to share my outfit for today. And I can put a picture of what it looks like here as well. So just have a slightly more in-depth look. Here is the guidebook, A Gothic Witch's Oracle. Starting off with some different reviews, and we can see it's got an introduction to using the deck, following some text about the creators. So the introduction is quite a few pages long. We've got using the deck. So it seems like there's going to be, a pretty good introduction into it. And then, as I said, each card has a few pages for it. And let's see at the end, I think it finishes with, what's this? Yeah, it finishes just with the final card number 40. So as I said, I'm not sure if the deck coming from decreasing in number was a stylistic choice or a packaging choice, but this is the card number 40. So what I think I'll do is I'll turn them over, and then I can start with card number 1. And if you don't want to see the whole deck, then please skip over this part because I don't want to ruin any surprises. If I'm getting a deck, I like to see at least some of the cards for the first times because that's part of the fun. So this is card number 1, Embracing Musical Healing. That's, again, as I said, it really makes me think of an album cover. Especially it's got quite an industrial feel to it, which I think comes from some of the fact that it's photographs and collages constructing a shadow shrine. So this reminds me of, in the book Gothcraft, there's quite a lot of text about practical advice on how to sort of embrace the more shadow aspects of the craft. So it initially seems like this deck is doing the same thing, accepting inner beauty, rejecting social conditioning, learning from sorrow. Oh yeah, so there's some nudity in this deck. Taming the ego, Invoking with makeup. See, in Gothcraft here, there's actually quite a comprehensive section on makeup, and interestingly, sort of how it can be part of one's spiritual practice. So it's cool to see how this oracle deck seems to be quite linked with the contents of this book, and how I'm sure they could then be used in conjunction with each other. Crafting a shadow spell, bonding with the elements. So some of these, like this image, it's not initially clear perhaps how it relates to the title, but that, you know, just gives more opportunity to think about things and ask oneself, like, why does it fit? Why do I think it doesn't fit? So there's a lot of opportunity for self-questioning, whereas something like this, modifying the body, it's very clear how the image relates to the card title. And I think this is a very interesting one because this epitomizes for me how I feel about the deck so far, in that it's got a lot of elements that some people might think, oh, that's frivolous or surface level, but if you really think about it, modifying the body has, you know, for centuries, thousands of years, been linked by many indigenous groups to very important spiritual practices. And so there's no reason why in the modern age that wouldn't also be true for subcultures. And I've often questioned, you know, when culture is seen by many as so important, why would subculture be seen differently? Perhaps because it's something one chooses often to be part of, as opposed to something one's born into. But I don't think that should be a reason why it's less profound. You know, why is music from certain cultures seen as high culture, whereas certain subcultural music seen as low culture? Is it because it's not as old yet? Will we see Gothic music in the same way that we see sort of traditional classical music in, you know, a few hundred years? There's a lot of interesting questions, and I think this card sort of makes me think about these things in a fun way. I think modifying the body, again, it's something you could do just for aesthetic reasons. It's something that could be very meaningful to you, and that really just comes from one's own perspective and experience. Meditating for deeper wisdom, recalibrating life's direction, observing the lunar cycle, examining sex and gender identity. It's quite an interesting card in today's climate, and I think it's a very interesting one also with the image used for this card. So yeah, I think this deck is definitely about not only exploring one's spiritual path, but also one's broader identity, it seems like, as healing with fashion also shows. Navigating personal boundaries. Some of these images, they really bring to mind this sort of early 2000s music videos, especially, you know, the classic music video Closer by Nine Inch Nails, a lot of album art by more industrial brands like Wumpscut, and yeah, I think this is all very nostalgic for me, and I mean, this is music and aesthetics that I love and interact with on a daily basis, so I feel like I have a connection to these images because of that context. Oh, I'm sorry if I didn't read some of these. Nurturing the inner child, that's what I was kind of talking about, and honouring our ancestors, which is also interesting because especially with different subcultures, many people can be in a position where they may think that their ancestors may not approve of their, you know, lifestyle choices in terms of their aesthetics or how they choose to live. And then there's that idea of honouring our ancestors, but also being able to understand that they would probably see us and be shocked at what we're doing for so many reasons, but as would we if we had met them, so, and if we would meet our ancestors in many generations to come. So I feel like that's an interesting, I feel like this deck is quite thought-provoking, but in a way that is fun and interactive. So shattering the mental prison, loving your uniqueness, reflecting on vices, working with nocturnal energies, balancing the natural and the urban. Again, this is sort of bringing the idea of spirituality into a more everyday setting, into a more modern setting. Whilst I absolutely love exploring these things in nature and as part of the natural world, this is, you know, a more urban based deck to me. It is based in the city, in clubs, in bars, in one's home, and exploring, saying how you can explore all these questions in these places, as opposed to, for example, in a forest, as you might see in many oracle decks. Utilizing dark magical tools, enchanting jewelry and accessories. That's a card I'm not initially connecting with that image per se, but the idea of the card I really like. Generating self-confidence, assembling an esoteric symbol. Again, sort of there's text in this book Gothcraft about all of these things. Honing psychic and empathic skills, performing blood magic. Again, it's interesting because this image, she has, I believe, some thorns or sticks through her hand, it looks like. I have to look at that in more detail. Not immediately linking to the card title, but interesting. Communicating with the dead. So I feel like these might not be practices that this deck sort of alludes to, might not be things that you personally do, but I think instead of taking it literally, you can then sort of take it as a metaphor or something to think about, as opposed to prescription to actually do the thing that's written about in the card. Transcending suffering, mourning life's hardships, casting with water magic, accessing the web of life. Oh, I like that card. Divining the unknown, studying global spirituality. What is that image? It's a woman sort of slumped over a table covered in crosses, holding a cross, sort of weighed down by that, but then it's asking to study global spirituality, maybe sort of looking beyond, if you're feeling weighed down by the traditions that surround you, sort of looking further afield. But then, you know, wherever you're from, it's natural that the traditions that surround you do weigh you down, because you will be experiencing the elements of them that are prescriptive and that aren't seen as a choice. Whereas if you're, you know, looking from the outside in, you can often, you know, experience the more positive or life-affirming aspects without being expected to partake in the aspects that sort of often take away from personal freedom. And I think, you know, we can easily one in the West can assume that only applies to the religions that we grew up with, but, you know, living in different parts of the world and speaking to people, that's often felt wherever you are, you know. It's not limited to one location, and it can be felt, and that just to say that, you know, there's always going to be positives and negatives in everything. It's creating dark arts, so again, a springboard for creativity. I like that. And then number 40, resting mind and body. I quite like that the end of the deck is resting, almost like a conclusion. So these are the cards of the deck. Yeah, my initial thoughts are I enjoy the artwork, and I think the card titles definitely give us something that we haven't seen. You know, it's definitely got unique cards. When I'm thinking about other oracle decks I own and have seen on the market, I think it does offer something new, which I think is very important, you know, nowadays, because there's just so many amazing decks available. You want to say, well, if I'm going to purchase another one, I wanted to add something new to my collection, both in terms of artwork but also in terms of the deck itself, and the meanings. And I think, you know, initially it seems like that this deck definitely does that. You know, it's got cards that I don't think many other decks have, but mixed in with more sort of classic cards that a wide array of people will also be able to resonate with. Is this a deck that I would sort of use across the board for anyone doing a reading? No, this is a deck that I'm going to start off with for personal use, and then I think it would be a deck that I would, you know, if I knew that the person I was reading for was sort of darkly inclined and into these sort of aesthetics, because that will help them, you know, sort of connect with the cards, then I would certainly use this deck with them. But I think it would be one of the ones that's sort of more tailored in my collection to a specific audience, to find the right person. But I think it's like anything. If you do something that's more unique, you may appeal to perhaps a more niche group of people, but those to whom you do appeal, they will feel perhaps more connected to your work than the masses if you'd have created something much more general. So yeah, my initial thoughts, very interested, very much enjoying the deck, and my mind has obviously immediately gone to the other decks that I would love to pair this with. So after looking at the cards, and I was immediately flooded with ideas of decks that I'd love to pair this oracle deck with. I thought that what I'll do is, for the remainder of this video, I'll do some pairings so that anyone who's more so interested in the deck itself and you know, tarot and oracle, they can see what I'd love to pair this with. And I've gone for some options of, you know, decks that you may well have in your collection, and hopefully some decks that you might not, or you might not have heard of. And then I'm going to do a part 2 where I go more into the world building aspect of this, talking about things like music, art, fashion, graphic novels, and things that I'd recommend you explore as a way to further connect with the deck, because otherwise this video will be very long. And also I think there might be some people who are just interested in the deck, and others who are more interested in you know, Gothic subculture, dark aesthetics in general, and might be also interested in sort of seeing different media that I think goes with the deck. So yeah, now we're just going to look at some pairings, and also if you've seen my videos, you know I love to edge a lot of my decks, and looking at this deck I'm contemplating either edging it in black, which would be, you know, I think the classic choice, or purple, because I edge most of my decks in dark purple. I love just the idea of purple's sort of connection to the intuition, and also just how it looks, how a dark purple looks with so many different colour schemes. So yeah, that's going to be my decision. Do I go for black or do I go for dark purple? But let's get on to some pairings, and then hopefully you'll also want to see sort of the other media in my next video. So here's the deck. I haven't shuffled it yet because I think it's fine, we can just look at it in order. For my first pairing, I would like to do a deck that is, how old? I want to say it's about 9 years old, approximately. I made this case for it, and you'll have to tell me if this is the deck that you have. This is the Black Ibis Tarot, and it is a major arcana only tarot, and it is by, let me check, Bethelyn Bajema, I believe. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. It's a deck I got about 9 years ago, I believe, that I ordered online. I believe it was an American deck, and here we have a list of artists who feature in the deck. And this was my sort of initial idea for what I wanted to pair this oracle deck with, because you can see the artwork is it goes together really well, very complementary. So just want to flick through a little bit to see how the deck looks together. and I think this being a Mages only deck, you know, that will lend itself to a sort of different reading style. But initially, I'm really enjoying how these decks look together. The sort of sepia tones of both mixed with the sort of Gothic imagery, and I think they go together so well. This was my, you know, as soon as I saw this Oracle deck, it made me think of this tarot deck, and yeah, I think indeed they do go together very well. I think this would look lovely if you wanted to do a reading and sort of leave it out on an altar or wherever. I think it would look really great, and I think it would really lend itself to uses, you know, more connected to ideas of identity, aesthetics, creativity, and all that, and you know, obviously darker subcultures as well. That's lovely. The star here reflected in the star. Perhaps I'll leave it here just in case you don't have this deck, to leave a few cards unknown. Yeah, I think this looks stunning. I love this combination, and it delivered what I hoped it would. So that's the Black Ibis Tarot. I'm not sure if that's one that's still available or not, but yeah, it's a very unique, lovely creation, and I think it goes very well. I just made this case for it out of some Tibetan satin and some antique lace, so I'll pop that over there. So that was pairing number 1, which I think was a success. Pairing number 2 is another deck that I immediately thought of when I thought of this Oracle deck. It's actually another Oracle deck, but I personally don't mind pairing Oracle decks with each other. I think you'd just be reading with it in, you know, a certain way. I might want to add a tarot deck into the mix if I was doing an in-depth reading. But this is the Oracle of the Hectaean Path, by Ken Payne and Chris Butler, and this is the guidebook. And again, the reason I chose this deck for the pairings is because not only do I think the art styles will go together, being sort of a digital, very digital art, but also, you know, the flavour of the deck being perhaps more focused on the shadow, obviously this being focused on the goddess Hecate, and that's an energy that I feel present in the Gothic Witches Oracle. Yeah, I think these go together. The art styles aren't as similar as the Black Ibis Tarot, but I think they're certainly complementary, and looking at the meanings, I think they would definitely work well together. Oh, I love this aesthetic wise, and also meaning wise, mortifying the body and bondage. You know, perhaps experimenting with the appearance in a more alternative way to break free from a feeling of being trapped as a very initial reading. Yeah, interesting. I love that pairing, and you can see this is a deck that I have edged in the royal purple, so I think that might be my choice for this Oracle deck. We'll see. Then let's do this deck, the Thoth Nebula Tarot, a reimagining of Thoth Tarot by the tarot creator and YouTuber Nova Monday Tarot. I'll try and speed up again, otherwise this will take forever. Oh, that's upside down. Yep, again the deep purple hues, sort of dark colour scheme. This deck to me has a very sort of dreamlike quality, focus on the subconscious, on bringing to light what isn't seen, and I think this deck also has very much that that feel to it. So yeah, I like, that's the Hierophant. Yep, I think this is a successful pairing. It's definitely one I want to explore more in future. So that was the Thoth Nebula Tarot, and I believe, you know, the Thoth Tarot, the classic version would also go well with this deck. And then I might, another deck that I think is a more classic choice is the Witch's Tarot by Burning Paper Hearts. So that's just taking it out of the box, and this is a tarot deck, but it has pre-edged in black, beautiful matte cardstock, but it also has some extra cards that are certain archetypes. I think we're getting a little off center, but hopefully that will be okay. Yeah, so this is the Witch's Tarot with a Gothic Witch's Oracle. Again, very complementary in terms of aesthetics and also in terms of subject matter. Very, very much dreamlike, journeying into sort of dark realm to explore different hidden aspects of the psyche. So yeah, I love this pairing. This is definitely going to be one that I explore further as well. And I'm just asking myself, is there a sort of time of year that this deck is most suited to? I mean, the very obvious answer would be, you know, autumn, winter, Samhain. But I'm right now, you know, in spring, enjoying this deck very much as well, because, you know, I live somewhere where it's a little colder, a little gloomier, so I think it, you know, works at any time of year really. So that was the Witch's Tarot, I believe another successful pairing, and definitely one I'm going to be looking into more. Then I'm going to bring out, maybe I'll do two at once, just so, again, for slight brevity, and also I personally love doing spreads with numerous tarot decks, and this is the Cave of Sybil Oracle by Tara May that I edged in black. Which is a deck that has rightfully been exceedingly popular in the tarot community. And then I think I will introduce my deck, the Purnima Tarot, which, again, as I kept saying, I'm working on the second edition, but I truly am, and I am actually making some good progress after a few setbacks, some technological setbacks, but I'm making progress now, so we will have some information on that very soon. So this is sort of introducing aesthetics from, you know, different parts of the world into the mix, and let's see, does it work? Okay, initially I'm saying yes, the dark border, you know, my deck is very high contrast, but the black border mixed with the sort of dark, very dark colour schemes of these two decks, and to me the Purnima Tarot with its imagery based in Kathmandu, Nepal, sort of reflects a lot of the South Asian, Himalayan, Hindu and Buddhist imagery within the Cave of Sybil Oracle, sort of drawing it together, and then the dark aesthetics and sort of collagey feel of the Cave of Sybil Oracle to me is echoed in the Gothic Witch's Oracle. So again, this is perhaps a combination that would be, you know, much more so for personal reading rather than necessarily for others, and it's certainly more eclectic. But for example, seeing this spread to me, because just, you know, my personal experience of you know, loving dark aesthetic and Gothic music and art, also having lived in Nepal for over 10 years, and being very interested in the spiritualities reflected in all three decks. To me, this doesn't look disjointed, although because of my own personal experiences, whereas I can imagine for some people this array might seem a little bit disjointed, but this is very much very much a sort of aesthetic representation of my life experience. Here we've got, tattooing. That's my husband tattooing some Nepalese script on a friend in Kathmandu, and then this deck having the card about modifying the body, and then the similar sort of dark imagery in the Cave of Sybil Oracle, but coming from a different perspective yet again. To me, it this would be a very personal mix of decks. That's something that I personally resonate with a lot, and that's just to show how personal decks and pairings can be. And I think when you do introduce other decks into readings, you can sort of create that mix that is so personal to you that other people may not resonate, but by using the different decks you can sort of bring in different elements and aspects of your life. And I'll stop here because this is a beautiful selection, and that's cool. So these are getting out of order now, but that's okay. So that was the Purnima Tarot. Here we have the Death card. This was I don't know if I've shared this before, but this was the skull of a buffalo, which was sacrificed as part of a family death anniversary ritual, and then I actually carried this buffalo skull back on the back of a scooter from Bhaktapur, which is a town just outside Kathmandu, to Kathmandu, and then my husband very kindly stripped away all of the skin and preserved the skull, and it's now residing at our friend's tattoo parlour. And I feel like that's a story that might not quite translate, but with the right context it's not as shocking as it sounds, or could sound in certain contexts, but that is the story. And then that's actually our friend holding it by a vintage telephone in our friend's tattoo studio. That's how we made that card, and that's also why the card is a very, very special to me. And then let's go with another classic. We've got the Deviant Moon Tarot, a deck that is absolutely beautiful in its artwork and in its sort of invitation to journey into the subconscious. And then I'm also going to put on the side a deck that's similar in colour scheme but quite different in aesthetic, and that is the Klimt Tarot. Let's see if you can see those. Again, I'm sorry for the probably slightly off-kilter nature, but let's see. We'll work with it. So yeah, the Klimt Tarot is beautiful, Klimt inspired artwork with this gold foil, and then we've got the Deviant Moon with its very rich colours and dark imagery. And I think this just adds a very luxurious feel to the deck, in my opinion. See, we've got sort of mirroring here, and again this deck as well, I feel like one thing you could definitely say about it is, the artwork isn't super inclusive in terms of representing a very diverse group of people, but again, that's something I think that's more as a collector something to bear in mind. Like maybe if you're reading for different groups of people, introduce a deck into the mix to use with this one that may be more diverse, and that can sort of bring that element in, because I think it's always, the way I see it is, creators should create whatever they want to, whatever's authentic to them, and then
publishers and those using the decks, they can sort of ask themselves, do I need to add something into this for certain contexts in order just to perhaps show a more diverse array, but the deck isn't, you know, solely people as this one, it's a still life, so I just think that's something that I can imagine, you know, it would standing out, and that's always something that sort of the Gothic subculture has you know, had very sort of right criticisms of it. It hasn't always been the most inclusive subculture, although a lot of absolutely amazing musicians and artists do actually come from many diverse backgrounds. It's not that they aren't in the subculture, it's just that they aren't always placed at the forefront of the subculture where they should be. But I think, again, that's just something that I would see as, you know, that's something I might want to introduce into the mix, to bring in that more like greater diversity myself, rather than saying it's necessarily a shortcoming of the deck. Rather, I'm just saying that's something I would bear in mind when using the deck for others, and I might want to include different elements to make the reading itself more diverse, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's this combination. I think it looks beautiful. I really enjoy it. So that was the Klimt Tarot and the Deviant Moon Tarot. And then, let's see, I think we can do a final, you know, if you've seen my videos, you know I do love to go a bit overboard when it comes to these pairings, because I get very excited and start thinking about all the different decks that it would go with. But I think just so that I don't bore you too much, oh, this is one of my favourite cards, this is becoming one of my favourite cards, I'm going to do one last pairing. But yeah, just know that I could keep going on for a long time with pieces from my collection. But this is the Victoria Francis Oracle, which is, you know, a very classic sort of Gothic illustration. Yeah, I think, again, it's got that real nostalgia for me, and I was just, can hear my creaking antique chair as I just leaned back to take out this, which again is a very classic choice. It's Ian Daniels' Tarot of the Vampires. And then I'm going to pop in the Hush Tarot, which I edged in this purple colour. So let's see. Hopefully you can see that okay, but this I'm going to try and do a little quick flick through. These three are all illustrative, both tarot and an oracle, and see what these are looking like. I like how the Hush Tarot has these wonderful sort of sepia tones and imagery inspired by Victorian illustration. So it has a sort of softer feel, but I think it does still have that sort of dark Gothic spirit to it, whereas the Tarot of the Vampires and the Victoria Francis Oracle are more sort of classically Gothic in their aesthetics. But I think the Hush Tarot very much has that similar spirit to it. I feel like you can see these three are again on a perhaps more similar wavelength, and this is ever so slightly different, but I think it does go. I would perhaps use these two together or these three together. I'm not sure if the four would be if it would make sense, but I think it would in a much larger reading. Can see, I think the Tarot of the Vampires is a really classic choice to pair with the Oracle. I think that goes very well. and the Victoria Francis Oracle. Again, I think it really has that nostalgic sort of late 90s, early 2000s Gothic illustration. But then there's sort of bluish colours here that are reflected in the Hush Tarot. We've got the horses here. So yeah, it's as we can see, it's a deck that definitely lends itself to being paired with others. And I think, you know, there are so many other decks that I could be pairing it with that are coming to mind. I just, you know, have to stop at some point. But yeah, let's see, where are we going to finish? Let's see. Oh, I quite like this medley, so I'll leave it here. We've got these dark colours, but again the sepia tones of this image reflected in this wonderful rendering of the Hermit. So those have been my pairings, and let me know what you think. If you have paired this deck with any others, which have you paired it with, and if there are any of my pairings that sort of stood out to you as particularly interesting, please do let me know which ones those were.
Thank you for watching my unboxing of the Gothic Witches Oracle by Raven Digitalis. Please let me know what you think of my pairings, of my thoughts, and let me know if you've got this deck or if you're thinking of getting it. And please join me for part 2, where I'm going to use my idea of world building with tarot and oracle to take the Gothic Witches Oracle as a starting point and share with you some music, media, art and aesthetics that I think would be great avenues to explore to further connect with this deck, and also just sharing some things that I love really. So yeah, I hope to see you soon. Have a great rest of your day and see you in part 2. Bye!